In the earliest age of existence, before the sun first kissed the earth, and before the mighty ash tree Yggdrasil spread its roots across the 9 realms, the threads of fate themselves wove together to create a being of unparalleled grace and power. From the timeless forces of destiny, love, and wisdom, Frigg was born, a luminous presence destined to guide the gods through the mysteries of life and death. Her arrival was not heralded by storms or chaos like so many others of Asgard, but by a serene stillness, a moment of perfect calm that spread across the heavens. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter as if bowing to this newborn goddess who carried the weight of countless futures within her. Frigg's gifts were profound from the beginning. She possessed the sight, the rare, terrible ability to glimpse the paths that the world might take. She could see the laughter and love to come, but also the sorrow, the betrayals, and the wars that would scar the realms. Yet unlike the fates who coldly spun and cut the threads of life, Frigg felt deeply. Her heart beat for every life, every destiny she touched. It was in Gladsheim, the golden heart of Asgard, that she found her place among the gods. Odin, the wise wanderer who sought knowledge at any cost, saw in Frigg not only beauty, but an intelligence and strength that even he could not rival. Beside him, Frigg rose as the queen of the Aesir, not through conquest, but through wisdom, compassion, and an unshakable will that could soften even the most hardened warrior. Thus began the reign of Frigg, the all-knowing mother, whose quiet influence would shake the fate of gods and men alike. Though her gaze could pierce the veil of time itself, she bore the burden of knowledge with grace, keeping secrets that would one day shatter even her own heart. In the early light of the cosmos, Frigg stood radiant, a symbol of all that was wise, nurturing, and unbreakably strong. But even then, in the depths of her soul, she knew that even the brightest beginnings carried with them the shadows of sorrow yet to come. High above the mortal world, in a realm where the clouds drifted like rivers of silver and the air shimmered with the warmth of eternal twilight, stood Fensalir, the sacred hall of Frigg. Unlike the grand, war-battered halls of the other gods, Fensalir was a place of peace, mystery, and silent counsel. The hall rose from the misty waters, its towers of pearl and pale stone seeming to grow from the very lakes themselves. Ivy woven with golden threads clung to the walls, and soft luminescence bathed every corridor. Within these walls, the future was not only seen but whispered and woven into the tapestry of fate by Frigg's own hands. Here, Frigg gathered her handmaidens, each as graceful and enigmatic as the goddess herself. Air, the healer of wounds both physical and spiritual. Fulla, the silent keeper of Frigg's most sacred secrets. Hlyn, the protector who whispered warnings to those marked for sorrow, and others, each bearing a part of Frigg's far-reaching power. Together, they tended the hidden threads of destiny, guiding those few who could be nudged from ruin toward salvation. Fensalir was more than a hall. It was a sanctuary from the violence and chaos that often consumed the gods of Asgard. When warriors clashed, when councils warred with argument and pride, Frigg would withdraw to Fensalir's tranquil embrace. There, surrounded by still waters and ancient wisdom, she would watch the river of time flow, knowing when to act, and more painfully, when to endure in silence. In the heart of her sanctuary, Frigg held counsel, not only with her handmaidens, but also with the silent forces of the cosmos itself. It was said that even the Norns, those ancient weavers of fate, occasionally passed through the mists of Fensalir, offering cryptic glimpses of what was to come. Yet, despite all her gifts, Frigg lived with the cruel burden of foresight, the knowledge that not all tragedies could be stopped, and that even in the halls of peace, sorrow would one day find its way to her door. Still, in those golden days when the world was young, Fensalir stood untouched, a beacon of serenity in a world brimming with strife, and a testament to the quiet, enduring power of the Queen of Asgard. High above the mortal world, in a realm where the clouds drifted like rivers of silver and the air shimmered with the warmth of eternal twilight, stood Fensalir, the sacred hall of Frigg. Unlike the grand, war-battered halls of the other gods, Fensalir was a place of peace, mystery, and silent counsel. The hall rose from the misty waters, its towers of pearl and pale stone seeming to grow from the very lakes themselves. Ivy woven with golden threads clung to the walls, and soft luminescence bathed every corridor. Within these walls, the future was not only seen but whispered and woven into the tapestry of fate by Frigg's own hands. Here, Frigg gathered her handmaidens, each as graceful and enigmatic as the goddess herself. Air, the healer of wounds both physical and spiritual. Fulla, the silent keeper of Frigg's most sacred secrets. Hlin, the protector who whispered warnings to those marked for sorrow, and others, each bearing a part of Frigg's far-reaching power. Together, they tended the hidden threads of destiny, guiding those few who could be nudged from ruin toward salvation. Fensalar was more than a hall. It was a sanctuary from the violence and chaos that often consumed the gods of Asgard. When warriors clashed, when councils warred with argument and pride, Frigg would withdraw at Fensalar's tranquil embrace. There, surrounded by still waters and ancient wisdom, she would watch the river of time flow, knowing when to act, and more painfully, when to endure in silence. In the heart of her sanctuary, Frigg held counsel not only with her handmaidens, but also with the silent forces of the cosmos itself. It was said that even the Norns, those ancient weavers of fate, occasionally passed through the mists of Fensalar, offering cryptic glimpses of what was to come. Often, they would sit beside the waters with Frigg, their heads bowed low, speaking in voices too soft for any other ear to catch. Their words, both a gift and a curse, armed Frigg with foresight no other deity could rival, and with sorrow that few could comprehend. There were moments in the quietest hours of the night when Frigg would walk alone through the endless, mist-shrouded corridors of Fensalar. She would pause by the great reflecting pool at the hall's center, gazing into its surface where images of the future danced like fragile fireflies. Sometimes she smiled, seeing glimpses of joy for those she loved. More often, she wept silent tears for the tragedies she was powerless to prevent. For all her wisdom, even Frigg could not change every thread. She could only weave her influence carefully, subtly, bending fate when possible, and strengthening hearts when inevitable sorrow approached. It was this sacred burden, carried alone in her shimmering hall, that defined her true strength, the courage to see all that would come, and to still love the world enough to guard it. In those golden days, while the laughter of gods still echoed across Asgard, and the world below thrived in innocence, Fensalar remained untouched, a place of unbroken serenity and quiet power, a lighthouse of hope, standing against the gathering storms of destiny yet to unfold. And there, in the heart of that sacred sanctuary, Frigg waited, watching, hoping, preparing for the battles of fate that even she could not avert. In all the vastness of the 9 realms, no bond was more profound, nor more layered with light and shadow, than the love between Frigg and Odin. Their union was not born of fleeting passion, but of something far deeper, a tether of souls forged in the dawn of existence itself. Odin, the Allfather, with his restless hunger for knowledge and power, was drawn to Frigg's quiet wisdom and unwavering gaze. She, in turn, saw through the tempest of his ambition to the lonely spirit beneath, yearning for something even he could not name. They ruled Asgard side by side, 2 halves of a greater whole. Where Odin commanded with the force of storms and a decree of kings, Frigg reigned with a gentler, more enduring strength. The silent weaving of destiny, the whispered counsel that shaped the course of gods and mortals alike. Her touch tempered his fury. Her voice anchored his reckless spirit. Yet their love was not without its trials. Odin's endless quest for knowledge often led him far from home, into the deep forests of Jotunheim, across the seas of Midgard, and even into realms forbidden. He sought secrets hidden by time, sacrificing much, including his own eye, to gain wisdom. And though Frigg understood the necessity of his journey, each departure left a hollow ache in her chest that only his return could mend. In the golden halls of Gladsheim, they would reunite, and their moments together were a tapestry woven from the threads of passion, laughter, and sorrow. Beneath the towering branches of Yggdrasil, they would speak of the fates of worlds, of the dreams they dared not voice aloud. In those fleeting hours, they were not king and queen, god and goddess, but simply 2 souls clinging to each other against the relentless tide of destiny. Frigg loved Odin not for his crown, nor for the legends sung in his name, but for the man he was beneath the trappings of divinity. Stubborn, flawed, brilliant, and heartbreakingly human in his loneliness. And Odin, for all his might and wisdom, revered Frigg with a devotion that no other could claim. She was the stillness in his storm, the star by which he set his course when all other lights failed. Yet even in their deepest love, an unspoken sadness lingered between them. For both knew that even gods could not escape the weaving of fate, and that one day even their bond would be tested in ways they scarcely dared imagine. Still, for every moment they were granted, They loved as only the eternal could love, fiercely, wholly, and with the bittersweet knowledge that nothing, not even the gods themselves, could hold back the final threads of destiny once they were spun. And so, in the luminous halls of Asgard and the sacred mists of Fensalir, the love between Frigg and Odin endured, a beacon of hope and sorrow alike, destined to echo through the ages long after even the stars themselves had dimmed. In all the vastness of the nine realms, no bond was more profound, nor more layered with light and shadow, than the love between Frigg and Odin. Their union was not born of fleeting passion, but of something far deeper, a tether of souls forged in the misty dawn of existence itself. Odin, the Allfather, with his restless hunger for knowledge and power, was drawn irresistibly to Frigg's quiet, impenetrable wisdom. She, in turn, saw through the tempest of his ambition to the lonely spirit beneath, a soul forever questing, forever yearning. They ruled Asgard together, not as simple monarchs, but as stewards of cosmic order. Odin commanded with the voice of storms the decrees written in the stars, while Frigg ruled with a strength far subtler, the weaving of unseen fates, the soft shaping of futures through love, kindness, and foresight. Her counsel was sought by all the gods, even when her words were cloaked in riddles, and it was said that nothing, no secret, no future, could be hidden from her. But their love was not a story of easy perfection. Odin's thirst for knowledge often led him far from home. He wandered into the icy chasms of Jotunheim, whispered bargains with ancient beings, and once even hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, sacrificing himself to himself for wisdom. Each journey left Frigg to sit in solitude upon her throne in Fensalir, gazing into the waters that reflected all possibilities, waiting, ever waiting, her heart taut with worry and longing. There were times when she would walk alone through the golden halls of Bladsheim, her footsteps echoing in the empty silence, feeling the absence of the man she loved more keenly than any blade. And yet, when Odin returned, battle-worn and heavy with new knowledge, she welcomed him with open arms and a gaze that spoke more than 1,000 words. Their reunions were like the meeting of rivers long parted, fierce, overwhelming, and filled with a sorrowful joy. One such night, under the shimmering lights of the aurora that danced above Asgard's peaks, Frigg and Odin sat together atop Hlidskjalf, the high seat from which they could see all realms. They did not speak of politics or prophecies. Instead, they spoke of memories, of simpler days when the worlds were young and laughter rang through the halls more freely. Odin leaned his head against hers, his mighty frame seeming smaller in that moment, and whispered, "Without you, the stars themselves would seem dim to me." Frigg smiled faintly, knowing that even gods feared loss, though they rarely admitted it. She wove a small charm into his cloak, a silent protection, a reminder that wherever his path led, her love would follow. Yet, for all their deep connection, an undercurrent of sadness ran through their bond. Both knew the prophecies that whispered on the edges of time. Ragnarok, the end of all things, loomed like a distant storm, inevitable and merciless. No amount of wisdom or weaving could unmake what was foretold. And so, they loved fiercely, desperately, savoring every stolen moment against the great tide of destiny. Frigg loved Odin not for his crown, nor for the endless songs sung in his name, but for the weary soul who carried the burden of all creation on his shoulders. And Odin, who had bartered with time itself for knowledge, revered Frigg as the one truth he could never question, the one presence in all the 9 realms that tethered him to hope. In their love, there was strength and sorrow intertwined, a love that would outlast battles, betrayals, and even the breaking of the world itself, a love that even death would struggle to silence. And so, in the luminous halls of Asgard and the misted fields of Fensalir, their story lived on, not merely as ruler and consort, but as 2 eternal souls, clinging to each other amid the endless winds of fate. Among all the treasures of Asgard, none was dearer to Frigg than her beloved son, Baldur. He was the light of her life, the joy of her heart, radiant and pure, untouched by the darkness that whispered at the edges of the world. From the moment of his birth, Frigg knew he was destined for greatness, but also sensed a shadow lurking in the far reaches of fate. Her love for Baldur was boundless, fierce, and unyielding. In his laughter, she heard the songs of spring. In his smile, she glimpsed the hope of all the 9 realms. To Frigg, Baldur was not merely a god. He was a beacon against the gathering gloom, a symbol of everything good that still endured in a world teetering on the edge of chaos. But her heart, attuned to the secret currents of destiny, could not silence the fear that grew in her soul. She had seen it in her dreams. Visions of her son, fallen and lifeless, while all of creation wept. Those dreams clung to her like a chill she could not shake, haunting her even in Asgard's brightest days. Refusing to let fate claim him without a fight, Frigg set out on a solemn quest. She traveled across the 9 realms, from the fiery mountains of Muspelheim to the icy rivers of Niflheim, seeking out every creature, every stone, every plant and beast. To each she knelt, regal yet pleading, and made them swear a sacred oath, never to harm Baldur. The world, touched by her sorrow and determination, agreed. Fire vowed to never burn him, water swore not to drown him, stones pledged not to crush him, and even the diseases of Midgard promised to leave him untouched. Every threat imaginable bent the knee to a mother's desperate love. When Frigg returned to Asgard, weary but filled with hope, she announced that Baldur was invulnerable, protected by the very fabric of existence itself. The gods, relieved and joyous, celebrated this newfound security. They devised games where they curled stones, hurled weapons, even thrust spears at Baldur, only to see them bounce harmlessly away. Baldur laughed with them, bright as the summer sun, fearless and free. But in the hidden corners of her heart, Frigg remained uneasy. There was one thing she had overlooked: the young, seemingly harmless sprout of mistletoe, too small and too innocent to seem a threat. She had not thought to ask it for an oath. Yet for now, the halls of Asgard rang with celebration. Mothers smiled at their children, warriors laid down their swords in his presence, and peace, however fragile, seemed possible. Frigg watched Baldur from her throne in Fensalar, a soft smile gracing her lips, her hands forever weaving invisible spells of protection. In those rare, golden days, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps love, a mother's fierce, eternal love, could truly change fate. But far beyond Asgard's shining towers, in the cold places where spite and envy breed, other eyes were watching, eyes that saw not love, but an opportunity to bring ruin. Frigg did not yet know that her efforts, noble and tireless though they were, had sown the seeds of a tragedy that even she, with all her foresight, could not undo. Among the gods of Asgard, Frigg stood apart, a queen, a seeress, a mother. Though many revered her for her wisdom and majesty, it was her heart that defined her, vast and tender, capable of embracing all the realms. And no being occupied that sacred space more fully than her radiant son Baldur. From his earliest cries, Baldur had been the light of her life. His golden hair shimmered like sunlight, his laughter could soften the hardest of warriors, and his kindness seemed endless. As he grew, so too did the love that all beings bore him, for he was untouched by cruelty, unmarred by jealousy, a soul so pure that even the earth itself blossomed beneath his steps. Yet Frigg, who had seen visions in the sacred waters of Urdarbrunner, knew that even the brightest flame casts a shadow. Dreams came to her in the quiet of the night, dark dreams filled with images of Baldur's death, a weapon piercing his flawless skin, his body lying cold and still as the 9 realms wept. Unable to bear the terror such visions inspired, Frigg rose from her throne and vowed that she would change the course of fate itself. She set aside her crown and donned the robes of a wanderer, leaving the golden halls of Asgard to embark on a journey few could imagine. Across burning deserts, over frozen wastes, through thick forests and treacherous mountains, Frigg traveled. She approached every element of the world: fire, water, earth, metal, and every creature, from the fiercest wolf to the smallest ant, beseeching them to swear an oath that none would ever harm Baldur. Even the diseases of Midgard, famine, pestilence, fever, were summoned before her, and awed by the queen of Asgard's sorrow and resolve, swore themselves harmless to her son. The very winds pledged to carry him gently, the stones promised to soften beneath his feet, and the seas vowed never to drown him. The journey cost her dearly. Frigg's hands, once soft from the finery of the gods, became calloused. Her feet bled from the sharp stones of distant lands. Yet none of this mattered, for every oath won was a link in the chain she was forging to bind Baldur's fate to life itself. At last, weary but triumphant, Frigg returned to Asgard. She gathered the gods and declared that Baldur was now invincible. No harm could touch him, no malice could reach him. The gods rejoiced. They crafted games to test this newfound invulnerability, throwing axes, hurling spears, and casting stones at Baldur, only to see each weapon fall harmlessly to the ground. Each trial became a celebration, and Asgard rang with laughter and song. Baldur himself laughed, serene and unafraid, while Frigg, watching from her throne in Fensaler, felt a rare moment of peace settle over her heart. Yet even amid the joy, a tiny thread of unease tugged at the corner of her mind. In her haste and exhaustion, there had been one thing she had not sought an oath from. A small, seemingly harmless sprig of mistletoe, growing in a shadowed glade, so young and slender it had seemed impossible that it could be a threat. She brushed the worry aside. What could a simple, tender shoot of green possibly do against the will of a mother and the oaths of the world? And yet, in the deep, dark corners of the realms, where hatred festers and envy breeds, other forces stirred. Forces that had watched her journey with cunning eyes, waiting, biding their time. As the gods reveled, as laughter and light filled the halls of Asgard, a single thread of doom remained unbroken, invisible to all but fate itself. And so Frigg sat upon her throne, smiling, even as the wheel of destiny, silent and inexorable, began its slow and terrible turn. The golden laughter that once filled Asgard fell silent in an instant. It happened during yet another day of sport. The gods gathering in the great hall, their spirits high, their games bold. They threw every weapon imaginable at Baldur, each one clattering harmlessly to the ground, each failed blow drawing cheers and merry laughter. It had become almost a ritual, a testament to the victory of love over fate. Yet among the throng stood Loki, silent and sly, his mind working in ways the others could not fathom. With poisoned sweetness, he had approached Frigg earlier, disguised in the form of an old woman, and gently, carefully, pried the secret from her lips. That there was one thing in all the world that had not sworn to do Baldur no harm, a slender sprig of mistletoe. With that knowledge, Loki fashioned a dart of mistletoe, small, almost laughable in its fragility, and placed it in the hand of Hoder, Baldur's blind twin brother. Whispering encouragement into Hoder's ear, Loki guided the throw. The dart flew, soft as a whisper, light as a feather, and struck Baldur in the heart. A sound like the shattering of the world rang out. Baldur staggered, his face a mask of confusion, and then he fell. No weapon had ever marred his flawless skin. No illness had ever dimmed his radiant light. But now, in front of all Asgard, the god of beauty, joy, and hope lay lifeless. The hall plunged into chaos. Thor roared in fury. Gods wept openly. The earth itself seemed to groan beneath their feet. But no grief was greater, no scream more heart-wrenching than that of Frigg. The moment her son's body hit the ground, something inside Frigg shattered beyond repair. She rushed forward, her royal robes trailing behind her, and cradled Baldur's still body against her chest. She rocked him like a babe, her sobs racking the halls of Valhalla, her tears soaking the earth. Her wails rose to the heavens and plunged into the deepest roots of Yggdrasil. The gods looked on helplessly, their own sorrow deep, but dwarfed by the enormity of Frigg's pain. Her heart, which had once held the strength to journey across the 9 realms and bargain with the elements themselves, now broke open like a shell crushed underfoot. No power of Asgard could mend what had been torn. The skies darkened with storms, and the world seemed to mourn with her. Animals howled, rivers overflowed their banks, and crops withered in the fields. Grief rippled through all of creation, for Baldur was not just a god of light. He was a vital thread in the very fabric of life. Desperate beyond reason, Frigg rose from her knees and turned to the gods. Her voice, cracked and hollow, pleaded, "Is there any among you brave enough, compassionate enough, to journey into the depths of hell and beg for Baldur's return?" The gods looked to one another, stunned and shamed. None dared defy Frigg's sorrow. It was Odin himself, grim and heavy-hearted, who took it upon his shoulders. He alone would ride to hell, the realm of the dead, to plead with its cold-hearted queen. But even Odin, the All-Father, knew the path ahead was treacherous, and that the fates were seldom moved by even the deepest grief. Frigg remained in Asgard, broken but unbowed, clinging to the fragile hope that somehow her beloved Baldur could be returned to the living. Yet even she, in the furthest chambers of her aching heart, feared that death, once it had claimed its due, would not easily relinquish its hold.